County Council. Every year in Nottinghamshire, we come together as a community to mark Holocaust Memorial Day, to remember the atrocities of the past and to help ensure that they are never repeated. I am proud to join with you in honouring all those who have lost their lives in these terrible events and to remember both what happened and, just as importantly, to try and understand why it happened. Ordinary people is the theme of the Holocaust Memorial Day 2023. Our theme this year highlights the ordinary people who let genocide happen, the ordinary people who actively perpetrated genocide, and the ordinary people who were persecuted. Our theme also prompts us to consider how ordinary people, such as ourselves, can perhaps play a bigger part than we might imagine in challenging prejudice today. As a community, it is important that we share a common and mutual respect for people of all faiths and from all backgrounds, and to celebrate this amazing, diverse communities we have in Nottinghamshire. It is up to all of us to take action for a better future. As I light this candle in memory of millions of people who lost their lives in the Holocaust and the genocide in more recent times, let us recommit to tolerance and respect towards all our fellow men and women. This way it all goes wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could hand over now to Rabbi Gilly from the Nottinghamshire Liberal Synagogue. Thank you.
Shalom. I'm going to read the Kaddish. The Kaddish is a prayer that is used in several ways in the Jewish liturgy, but it is very much associated with mourning. But it is not about the end of life, nor is it about grieving or sorrow. It is a glorification of God and a declaration of God's greatness. Before reading the Kaddish, I will read a short paragraph from the diary of Etty Hilsum. Etty, a young Dutch Jew, died in Auschwitz at the age of 29. And a few years before she was dying, during her stay in a concentration camp, she wrote her diaries. Life is beautiful, and I value it anew at the end of every day, even though I know that the sons of mothers are being murdered in concentration camps. Give your sorrow all the space and shelter in yourself that it is its due. For if everyone bears their grief honestly and courageously, the sorrow that now fills the world will abate. But if you do not clear a decent shelter for your sorrow, and instead reserve most of the space inside you for hatred and thoughts of revenge, from which new sorrows will be born for others, then sorrow will never cease in the world and will multiply. And if you have given sorrow that space its gentle origins demand, then you may truly say, life is beautiful and so rich, so beautiful and so rich, that it makes you want to believe in God. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהא שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר, ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה, ואמרו אמן. יהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם, ואמרו אמן. May the Most High source of perfect peace grant peace to us, to all Israel, and to all humanity, and let us say amen.
Thank you very much. Now we're coming on to the reading of the names. They will be displayed on the screen. If you see your name and you wish to recite it, then please do so. Otherwise, please remember the name in reverence. Thank you.
Rosalie Berman, 1942.
Adam Unger, who's 13 years old, died of Krakow, Poland in 1940.
Sarah Singer, aged 12, died in 1944. Eva Balan, 6, died in Ashford, 1950. Jacobet Burbach, he was murdered in Auschwitz, aged 12, in 1952.
Yammer Holocaust Memorial. In Hamburg, died in Auschwitz, 1942.
English Schwarz, died in 1950.
Nellie was 11 when she was living.
Thank you very much, everybody, for remembering the names. Moving on to the first of the speakers regarding the mugs or the silver tankards that you see on the table before you. There is a close-up of these for people dialing in. If people would like a closer look at the end of the event, then please let me know and you can have a look at them. The link of these objects to Nottingham in Nottinghamshire is through 97 Squadron, who were pathfinders in Bomber Command during the war. One of their members, Sergeant Ralph Rank, was a Jewish gentleman from Hamilton, Ontario in Canada, and he's laid to rest in the Jewish cemetery at Wilford. The two tankards are just standard tankards for beer that were presented when the officers left 97 Squadron to the squadron officers' mess. The first one has an inscription on it that says, presented to the officers of 97 Squadron by Flight Lieutenant E.A. Deverell, DFC, DFM, November 1942. He presented the officers with this mug when he finished his first tour. You had a double tour in Bomber Command, which was 2 tours of 30 operations. Because he was a Pathfinder and it was deemed more dangerous and they were elite, they were granted a double tour of 45 operations that were completed back to back with no break. So following his 45 operations, he presented the mug and moved on. The second mug is presented to the officers of 97 Squadron, Strait Settlements, by Group Captain N.H. Fresen, December 15th, 1943. Group Captain Fresen was the commanding officer of 97 Squadron, and he stood down from the squadron command the day before Black Thursday. And this is where the 2 mugs tie in. Black Thursday was the raid on Berlin of the night of 16th, 17th December 1943. It was the night when the squadron lost the most it lost during the war, a total of 9 aircraft out of 21 that were sent on the operation. Of that 9 Lancasters, 28 crew members died and 7 were injured. Coming back to do a second tour of another 45 operations with 97 Squadron was now Squadron Leader Deverell. It was his first operation back with the squadron, and it was his first one to Berlin for quite a while. As with the others of 97 Squadron, when they returned to England, there was a thick blanket of fog over the air bases. Their air base was RAF Bourne in Cambridge. A lot of them tried to divert to other airfields, and Squadron Leader Deverell diverted to RAF Gravely, which was a satellite site for RAF Bourne. Sadly, when he was coming in for his landing, he hit low ground in the fog and was killed. Out of his crew, only 1 member survived the crash, and that was the mid-upper gunner, Warrant Officer J. Benbow. I've left on the tables for people to peruse later the recounting of Black Thursday. There's also a description in the meeting with a link to the web page where that is. I've also included on the tables the raid on Augsburg, which was in 1942, and in which Squadron Leader Deverell won the DFC. Both of those are on the table, and please, feel free to browse those afterwards. I think it's important to remember that a lot of people from around the world came to Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire, Cambridgeshire to fight against the Nazis. Those being both the Jewish crews from Canada, Australia, South Africa, as well as the English crews who helped them as well. That's why I brought the ordinary mugs, because when 97 Squadron disbanded in 1960s, the mugs were taken by one of the pilots of 97 Squadron, who were then flying Canberras, away with him to New Zealand. Recently, he passed away and his daughter was going through his possessions. She came across 2 black mugs which caught her eye, so she decided to give them a little rub. the little rug became a bit of a polish, and she found the names and the inscriptions on them. As webmaster for 97 Squadron Association, she got in touch with me to ask, what was the significance of the mugs? When I related the story I've done today with regards to Black Thursday and Augsburg, she thought it fit and right that they be returned to 97 Squadron and to the museum where we have the Book of Remembrance. They are currently on their way to Thorpe Camp to be donated to the museum there, and I've had the pleasure of bringing them today to share them with you today. Again, after the event, if you would like to see them, please come up and do so. And that concludes the first speaking of the ordinary objects, the 2 silver tankards from 97 Squadron. I'd like now to hand over to Jeff Cohen, who's coming to talk to us about the Czech scrolls and other things. He has some stories, so thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm not Wendy Preston. I need to speak up because my wife's saying speak up. Okay. So unfortunately, Wendy couldn't come because her partner has broken her leg and she needs to look after her. But I'm Jeff Cohen. Wendy is the chair of the group that looks after the Czech Scrolls. We've got a group called the Friends of the Czech Scrolls, and Wendy is the chair of that group. I was the chair of that group for about 10 years before Wendy. So I've got a good background in what we're going to talk about. In fact, there's so much to say that it's very difficult to know what to leave out. But so much of what there is to say is so sad, it's difficult to say anything at all. But at least our story hasn't got a sad ending. In fact, it hasn't got an ending at all, because what we're doing today is really part of a never-ending story, remembering the people who were victims of the Holocaust. But the story I want to tell you about begins in 1968. Can you hear me, Leslie? Yeah. All right. So it begins in 1968, when our newly formed synagogue in Nottingham Liberal Synagogue, received a Tower Scroll, which we thought at the time belonged to the Jewish community of Slavkov in the Czech Republic. And Slavkov is formerly known as Austerlitz, who you might know is famous for the Napoleonic battle. That was the German name, and the Czech name is now Slavkov. During the Second World War, the Nazis plundered the synagogues throughout Bohemia and Moravia and stored the religious artifacts in Prague. It was thought that they intended them to exhibit them in a museum of an extinct race. Among them were 1,500 Tower Scrolls. They were discovered by a London businessman, and many of them have been distributed throughout synagogues around the world, including our own in Nottingham. One of the heroes of our story, Neil Pike, a member of our synagogue, I don't know if he's there online, says about researching the history of where we thought our scroll came from. He discovered that one Jewish person still lived in Slavkov. That's Ruth Matioska. She is one of the few Jews who survived the transports to Terezin. 121 from that town perished and 20 survived. Ruth survived because her father was a dentist, and the Nazis employed him to extract the gold teeth from the dead bodies. Ruth was an ordinary person who fell victim to the Nazis, but we organised for her to give a video testimony of her experience of being transported to Terezin. We produced a play based on the testimony, which we performed in Nottingham, and then translated the script back into Czech to be performed by the school children in Slavkov in front of Ruth herself. I've got a picture. There's a picture here of the Tower Scroll. So maybe you can see that afterwards. But one of the scrolls at the bottom of the picture is dedicated to the victims of Slavkov. And it says on the yeah. If I can just read out what it says on the cover. This scroll here, dedicated in memory of the Jewish community of Auschwitz, Slavkov, who perished in the Holocaust. Right. The Tower Scroll, I haven't written this down, but the Tower Scroll is written by a special sofa with a very pious individual by hand with a quill pen, which might take about a year to write. It's a very precious object. That scroll is about 300 years old. The town council in Slavkov managed to secure funding to restore the old synagogue building. And Hannah Pike, Neil's daughter, celebrated her bar mitzvah in the synagogue building. It was an incredibly moving occasion. The first service that had been held in the building since 1938. We introduced a prize to the Slavkov school children for an essay or piece of work on a Jewish theme. And it's one of these essays which I want to tell you about, as it fits in with the theme of ordinary objects. This essay was written by a Czech schoolgirl, Bronislava Vandrova, aged about 12 when she wrote it. She had in her possession some wooden picture blocks, and there's a picture of the picture blocks here that people can see afterwards, a few copies on the table. So when you turn these blocks around, they form 6 scenes of fairy tales. They are in a pristine condition. They belonged to Bronislava's mother, and before that, her grandmother. Her grandmother was a friend of a Jewish girl, Erika Schmidtova. Erika, alongside the rest of the Jewish community, were being transported by the Nazis to Terezin and were only allowed to take 20 kilograms of luggage. The toy blocks weighed too much to take, and Erika took them round to a friend and said to a friend, "Dearest, I brought you these picture blocks. I love them very much, but I can't take them with me. My mother says they're too heavy. I know that you will look after them very carefully and keep them for me until I come back." I actually find it difficult to comprehend the murder of 6 million Jews. It's just too big to take on board. But it's through the stories that I've just told you, through the individuals, the ordinary people, that seem to encapsulate these properties. A few years ago, though, we discovered that the Tower Scroll didn't actually come from Slavkov, but belonged to the Jewish community from a town called Kamenetsy nad Lipou. There'd been a mistake in the catalogue numbering. However, we located another scroll, actually from Slavkov, that was not being used by synagogue and is now in our safekeeping in Nottingham. So now we have 2 Czech Tower Scrolls. Wendy, who was going to give this talk, has been piecing together information about the Jewish community of Kamenetsy. 42 men, women and children were transported to the concentration camp from Kamenetsy, and also more from the surrounding areas. All perished, apart from 2 people who escaped. Last November, a group of us from Nottingham Liberal Synagogue travelled to Kamenetsy and unveiled a plaque to be fixed on the railway station, which read in English and in Czech, in memory of the Jewish community of Kamenetsy nad Lipou and the surrounding area. Members of the community, men, women and children, were transported from the railway station in November 1942 to Terezin, and from there to Auschwitz, where they were murdered. There were only 2 known survivors. We honour and remember them all. Zacharinu, Lebrocha, may their memory be for a blessing. And so our story continues.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I'd like to pass on my regards to Wendy and her partner for presenting us with Jeff. It was lovely to hear the story. I think one of the things that we need to remember is numbers. The amount of people that we're taking to the camps is hard to understand. What is easy to understand is one person. And I think that's what's displayed on the boards today and the stories that we hear. One person who took the decision to do something. It's easy to stand by, it's easy to let things go. We were hoping to have somebody from the Ukrainian centre today, but I was unable to organise it in time. That's my poor organisational skills. This is an annual event, and every year I nearly get it right. But what I'd like to say is that this isn't a remembrance of the past. This is to remember the future as well. Things are going on in the world today that echo, mirror, come very close to what happened in the past. During the morning and the introduction, we've been playing the video of the 10 stages of genocide. If people take a moment to just look at those 10 stages and just see how far along we are, those 10. We shouldn't be on number 1, but we aren't. We've moved on. Today we have rhetoric like an invasion of refugees, echoes of language that was previously used. These are people seeking our help. We had the kinder transport that is quite famous. We have a colleague who was here last year who had her father who was a Windermere boy. Again, a person who was seeking salvation and we provided it in this country. We are a rich country and we can still do that. We have helped with the Ukrainian situation at the moment, but more can be done and more should be done. And we should be stopping wars. We should be stopping fighting each other. We're all the same. We all have different languages, we have different religions, we have different ideas. But we're one people and we're on one planet. So it's important that we do take time to remember, but it's also we need to reinforce in ourselves that we shouldn't let this happen. There are people, as I say, who help out the Ukrainian situation at the moment, but we've also got wars in Afghanistan and refugees from there. We've got, when you look at the genocide posters we have on, one of them says Darfur 2006 and on to present. We shouldn't be having and present. I thank everybody for coming. As I say, it's an annual event that we do, and I appreciate all the efforts that everybody does. The names are really important. It was one of the founding things we did at Nottinghamshire County Council and Unison was remember a name, because the idea was to get rid of a people, to wipe that people out, to destroy them, and as Jeff pointed out, have a museum of an extinct race as a display. So I thank people for asking for their names, and I thank you for remembering those names. I've been speaking with Jeff and the Rabbi earlier today that they also remember names of the children. And I've asked if it's possible to incorporate their names into our events going forward, because we have to tie Nottinghamshire into the global picture. We gave refuge and we give refuge, but we also need to remember we also have a voice. We can mention to our governments, we can mention to world governments that this needs to stop, and we need to stop having to remind people this happened. and we need to stop having new things to remember. I don't want another Darfur. I don't want another Bosnia, Cambodia. These should all be stopped. So I think if we can all take something from today, it's remember a name, go to some events, go to museums, do some more research on the Holocaust, have a look at the 10 stages, and you yourself view where you think we are on that. It's not a competition to get to number 10. It really isn't. We should be getting a competition to number 1 where there is no step. I've finished a little early because there is, we've missed out on one of the speakers today. But I'd like to hand over again to our chairman to end the proceedings at the moment. We will extinguish the candle. As I say, we will be continuing on for people in the room to have a look at the items that are here. We'll try and get some photos and links to the items Jeff's mentioned into the programme that's going to be put on YouTube later for the links there. There is an internal Yammer page if you community, so if you have a look at the Holocaust Memorial Day event Yammer page, there are links in there to the posters and to the items that are here as well. Yeah, thank you very much, and I hand over to the chair.
Thank you for all attending this important event, but to me it's been quite a poignant event and a bit of a time for reflection of who we are, what we do in our lives. I think we need to just probably go away and reflect on what is happening in the world today, not just in the past, but have we learned from the past. On this day, we remember those who suffered because of the Holocaust and subsequent genocides around the world and the ones who survived. We need to use their memory, experiences to inspire us to make better decisions which affect our communities and the world around us. The message of peace, I'm closing this event by extinguishing the candle. I wish you all well and hope to see you again in the future, maybe here next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. I understand it's not an easy subject when you see the numbers involved. We have got the Yammer page, so if you want to place comments on